Up, everybody? Welcome back to humanities class. Okay, yesterday I had given a lecture on social media, and in that one I gave several different vocab terms that were in the notes, but I explained them in the lecture video and told you what I would recommend you put down into your page of ongoing humanities notes that we'll do this semester. Reminder that I might throw in some quizzes every now and then, and for the multiple choice part of the exam, a lot of those terms would be covered on it. So I promise not to give you hundreds of terms or anything or that much vocabulary, but throughout the semester, we probably will have 20 to 30 different key terms and phrases that I will want you to put in your notes and expect to answer questions on for the final. In yesterday's social media lecture, and I did a couple bonus videos, I wanted to cover how kind of two big things, like how does social media affect us on the macro or the very big scale, like societal level? How does it affect us in the micro level, or like how does it affect us as individuals? So two key questions for you there. And then specifically, I kind of honed it in as, do you think that social media in general for both of those levels is a net positive or a net negative? So that means, anything as complex as social media is going to have some pros and cons, good things and bad things. Basically, what I'm asking you is, do the good things outweigh the bad things? Or do the bad things outweigh the good things? Is it overall, if you had to pick one and put it in one category or the other, is it a good thing that we should be happy that we have and a useful tool out in society? Or overall, is it doing more harm than good? So for today's journal entry, which I will have on a separate post, part one of the journal entry will essentially be that. I'm asking you to answer that question in your opinion and give me a thoughtful response where you back up whatever your stance is with some details. And for this one, I want you to pick a side on that too, because I know it'd be real easy to fence it and say, well, it's about balance. There's some good things and bad things. Yeah, I get that. There are some good things and some bad things about social media, but I want you to answer. If you had to pick one or the other for both of those levels, the big scale level and then the small scale individual level, is it more good than bad or more bad than good? So that'll be the first part of the journal entry. Hopefully you had watched that yesterday and been considering that a little bit. I would also encourage you, if you have a parent or you're by friends and you're exposed to other human beings actually, like face to face, or I guess even if you're on social media or you're texting somebody, maybe have some discussions about that. That would be a good thing to have a literal discussion about, because a lot of times I think that helps me think through it. When I sit down and talk with Mr. Shelton or Mr. Fry and we're arguing about something politically, that really helps me think it through and formulate my opinion better when I'm actually talking to somebody and getting feedback. All right. The second part of the journal is what I'm going to cover here today, where, again, it's an opinion-based thing. There is no real right or wrong answer, but something that is blowing up in the news right now. And first, let me say, I promise not to get super political this semester. I'm not looking to make politics like one of the major issues that we cover in humanities class, but I felt like this, while we were on the topic of like social media, it was hard to ignore this because this is blowing up in the news right now. I would imagine most of you saw President Trump got banned on Twitter, and he basically got banned on all of the different social media sites. Now, admittedly, whether you like Trump, you're a big Trump fan, or you hate Trump, or you're indifferent and just somewhere in between, I think one thing all of my conservative friends and liberal friends can agree on is, man, Trump says a lot of outrageous stuff on Twitter. Now, some people like that about him, and it's part of the appeal. Some people absolutely hate it, and it drives them nuts that we have a president that says like unprofessional things very publicly like that. Whether you like his Twitter account or don't like it, I think one thing that, again, both of my friends on both sides of the spectrum would agree on, it's almost impossible to imagine a guy like Trump getting elected to president if he hadn't had Twitter, if he hadn't had social media, because a lot of his message, he was covered in a negative way for the most part, really right from the beginning on like major network news and by the big newspapers around the country. And that was something that he complained about all the time and said he was always treated very unfairly. Again, I don't care what your opinion is on that one way or the other, but I do think a valid point is him being able to go and message directly to the people, to throw his messages out there totally unfiltered, where it's not a middleman like repeating what the president said. He's tweeting directly out to all his followers. That is a powerful tool. And he is the first like big, national level politician that harnessed it in that kind of a way. And it really developed him a big following. I mean, I've never seen a president, or any politician for that matter, have a fan base like President Trump. I mean, through most of American history, people will like a politician or not like them, but they're not that passionate. Whereas for Trump, he's an anomaly. I mean, I see Trump flags every day in pickup trucks with big banners coming off of them and people wearing Trump shirts. I've never seen that for any politician ever before. So there's something interesting and unique going on there. And I think a lot of that charisma and how he appealed to everybody, a big part of it, not all of it, but a big part of it was his use of social media. Well, now according to the head of Twitter, this Jack Dorsey guy, and Mark Zuckerberg, who's the head of Facebook, they basically all of the social media companies, these big, monolith organizations that kind of dominate like public speech and discourse today, like people talking to each other in communication. Those guys, they're all based out of like Silicon Valley, this area in California, kind of near San Francisco. And then they kind of like blanket, like just banned him. They kicked him off the sites after the Capitol riots had broke out because they said he had encouraged that. And the other part of their reasoning was, I think I'm getting this pretty accurate here. The other thing that they said was he keeps saying the election was fraudulent and there's not enough evidence to substantiate that. So they're saying he is spreading misleading information and now it's leading to riots. That's their reasoning for why they took him off their sites. So my question to you is not necessarily recapping any of that, but do you think, is that the right policy? Is that what should happen? And I don't want you to think of it, try not to think of it from a partisan way, like a political way, whether you are a Trump fan or not a Trump fan. Think about it like really more of as a policy type thing. Is it okay to kick the sitting president, because he is still the sitting president for a few days, off of these sites and take away his direct line of communication to the American people? I can honestly say I'm very strongly opinionated about this, but I can honestly say I see the arguments on both sides of it. If you think what he is doing is treasonous and you think he's causing violence and it's going to lead to riots, well, I mean, that's a pretty strong argument for banning somebody from a site or a platform. On the other hand, I'll hear the opposite side, the pro-Trump people, argue and say, hey, he didn't tell anybody to go riot. If you go back and look at his tweets and what he said in that speech, there were some mixed messages for sure. He was definitely riling the crowd up, but according to him, he's still saying there were fraudulent things happened in the election. That's his opinion, and I get he's trying to substantiate that as best he can. But he's saying that the election had a lot of issues, a lot of flaws and fraudulent. But then right after he said that and he got the crowd kind of all riled up, then he did very clearly say, go peacefully, go march in front of the Capitol, protest, which of course there's been a lot of protesting going on throughout all of American history. And the First Amendment does give us the right to peacefully assemble. Okay, that's part of the First Amendment. So a right all Americans should have. So according to them, they're saying, hey, he didn't tell anybody openly to riot. If he said go riot and break into the Capitol, well, then it's a no-brainer. You're telling people to do something that's a criminal action. But the way this is going down, you're basically holding him responsible for other people's actions. You get what I'm saying? Like even if you were responsible for elevating the temperature and heating things up, if you don't directly say to go commit a crime, can you be accused or can you be held responsible for somebody else committing a crime just because you got them all riled up and red-faced and angry? I don't know. Kind of an interesting question there and a dilemma. So here's part 2 of this journal. I wanted to give a little background and a little talking about that to just set the stage for it. My question is, and I'll have this recapped out in the notes. First, is it right to ban Trump? Considering Trump's actions, and if you haven't seen his little speech yet and comments or his tweets, I'd encourage you to go look him up. I think I included part of his speech on a clip earlier this week, but you could easily go find it on YouTube. So first up for this one, is it okay to ban somebody that's the sitting president? Is it okay for what he did to take away their voice? In addition to Trump getting kicked off of those sites, I guess, and I don't know this to be 100% fact, but I've seen it reported in the news that something like another 60,000 Twitter accounts were purged. Now, some of those might have been bots, but some of them apparently are other conservative people that are just supportive of Trump. So do you think it's right or wrong? Should it be allowed to kick somebody off of a social media site for what he did there, for under those circumstances? All right. So think about that for a second. And the second question that I want you to answer is, let's say that this stays status quo and Trump is removed from all of the social media and some of his followers are. Let's say that that's upheld, and whether that goes into courts or whatever, it's held in the social media companies, which are private companies. Their right to ban whoever they want is upheld, and they're allowed to do that. Next up, so say that happens, what is going to be the consequences of it? He had, I think, 70 some million people voted for him. And they say, I think it's about 80% of that considers themselves really hardcore Trump supporters, like fans of the guy. Where are they all going to go? What's going to happen? Like, if you start taking all conservatives off of social media sites or removing them for saying any of those like inflammatory things, what's going to happen next? And honestly, I don't have a real rock solid answer for that myself. I do plan to, after you guys answer this journal the next day, I think I'm going to go through and kind of recap and give you my take on all of those questions. But before I do that, I don't want any of my bias or my opinions to contaminate your thoughts. I want you guys to think about those questions. And there was 4 of them total. I'll have them recapped out in the notes of the section. I want you to answer those, and that'll be, journal number 2 for this quarter. So remember, for each journal, you're supposed to have at least 4 lines of writing. I would think with all 4 of those questions, you should have if you're going to answer those questions correctly, you're probably looking at more like 8 to 10 lines worth of writing. So please give a thorough answer for those. And I just want to see, I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. I might do a Q&A later in the week because I'm really curious to hear the arguments on both sides and what you guys come up with. All right, that's what I got for you today. Yapped at you a little while. I don't have any other assignment. I might include a few other videos that you could watch, but those ones will be optional. Mainly, I wanted you to see this and then go answer the journal questions. Take care, guys.